We're going to begin the 5th chapter of the Mishnah of Shabbat. And I just want to remind us of the Mishnayot which began chapter 2 and chapter 4. Chapter 2, Bame Madlikin, Uvame Ein Madlikin. What do we light with and what do we not light with? And in chapter 4, Bame Tomnim, Uvame Ein Tomnim. What do we cover with and what do we not cover with? The Mishnah is very interested in this style. What do we do and what do we don't do? And now we're going to start the 5th chapter. With what can an animal go out and with what can it not go out? So the same sort of distinctions, but we're moving from cooking and lighting into carrying. And remember, we began the whole tractate of Shabbat with carrying. Carrying somehow is the least obvious of the activities which are prohibited on Shabbat. And perhaps because it is the least obvious, the Mishnah begins with it. And now in the 5th chapter, the Mishnah is going to spend, I think, 3 or 4 chapters just discussing different kind of issues related to carrying. It begins not with carrying by a human person, but by carrying with an animal. And I want to remind us of the verse. I mean, there are many verses about Shabbat. This one comes, I think, from the parsha of Mishpatim. This one comes from Mishpatim. 6 days you shall do your stuff. Uvayom hashiviti shpot, on the 7th day you shall rest. Leman yanuach shorecha v'chamorecha, in order that your ox and your ass may rest. And v'ina fash benamatcha v'hager, and that the son of your maidservant and the stranger will be refreshed too. So the ox and the ass have to rest too, and they can't carry out work for us on Shabbat. So they can carry out their own work. We're going to see this distinction in the 5th chapter. Stuff that an animal needs or an animal might require for normal purposes is allowed. We can do ordinary stuff with animals, but they can't carry out work they can't carry loads for us, for example. They can't carry in and out something that we wouldn't carry in and out. To take a simple example, we're not going to carry on Shabbat, and the animal's not going to carry on Shabbat for us. And we'll see this play out in the Mishnayot. With what may an animal go out and with what may it not go out? And it does go out with all kinds of normal things which we need to control the animal, which have nothing to do with work, really. Yotzea gamal ba'aspar v'nakar v'hartam ve'luv de kiss, but from bia v'sus b'shar v'chol b'alei hashar yotzim b'shar v'nimshachim b'shar. A camel can go out with a bit, and a female camel with a nose ring, and a Libyan donkey with an iron bridle. This seems to be a difficult kind of animal to control. A horse with its chain, and actually any chain-wearing animal can go out with a chain and can be led by a chain. And I think this might apply to pets today. We've seen before that the Mishnah likes to associate one mitzvah with another. And it's going to remark, by the way, this animal's wearing a chain. Of course, generally animal chains animal things aren't susceptible to becoming tameh, but this is a chain that a human being uses to control the animal. So if it comes into contact with a creepy crawly or with a corpse, it'll become tameh. We might need to sprinkle it with the ashes of the red heifer, or we might need to immerse it. And the Mishnah just remarks, Umazin alehen betovlim bim koman. You can, if you need to sprinkle it with the ashes of the red heifer, or if you need to tovel it, if you need to dip it in the mikveh, you can do it in its place. You don't have to take it off the animal. You can sprinkle it while it's still on the animal. And there's more. A donkey can go out with a saddle cloth. This seems to be some kind of cloth that is strapped onto the donkey. And Bartanura says, and so does the Rambam, that it keeps it warm. So again, this is something that the animal needs. It's not something that the human needs. So it's going to go out with its saddlecloth, bisman shehi kshuralo, if it's fastened to it. The clear implication, by the way, is that it's fastened before Shabbat comes in. So before Shabbat comes in, we're going to fasten this object. We're not going to get into a situation where we need to fasten it on Shabbat. Zecharim, yotzim, luvim, rams can go out strapped up. Ewes can go out with their tails tied up or tied down or covered. This is all to do with stopping the rams and the ewes from mating together. And maybe this is something we do want, depending on what stage we're at in the breeding, right? Maybe this is something we do want, or maybe we don't want. But the point is, it's basically for the purpose of the animal. It's not carrying out work for us. Izim yotzot srot, goats go out tied up. Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yudah says, Izim yotzot shrot le yabesh. And now we get a sense as to why these goats are tied up. Why are the goats tied up? Seems to be to do with their udders. Izim yotzot shrot le yabesh aval lo chalav. Lo le chalav. And the Gemara explains here that in the time of the Mishnah, they would tie up the udder of the goat in order to dry them up, to stop them milking, or you tie them tightly in that case, or you might tie them loosely just in order to catch milk drips which are dripping down. And there is an idea, maybe if you tie them loosely, that the cloth which is tying them up will come undone, and then of course you get into a situation where you might have to refix it on Shabbat, or you might have to carry it on Shabbat. And of course the sages of the Mishnah are really anxious in case we are put into a position where something is on an animal for its own benefit, but the human is put into a position of having to carry it on Shabbat. And that is the situation, for example, with the things that the animal can't go out with. And that's the third Mishnah. What kind of things can the animal not go out with? Lo yetze gamal, bi'metul telet. A camel can't go out with a pad. Now, the Rambam explains this is some kind of cloth which is tied to its tail to mark it out. It seems to be, again, for the human rather than for the animal, but there's an anxiety that if it falls off, the human might want to carry it in the public domain on Shabbat, which clearly we're not going to do, or might need to fix it on Shabbat, which clearly we're not going to do. And various other things that the people used to do for camels in those days. Lo say gamal be lo akud velo ragul. Akud and ragul are with their legs tied up. They used to hobble the camel to stop it going too far. But we can't do that on Shabbat. It has to be free to walk around. Same goes for all the other animals. So we're not gonna fix a hobble onto an animal on Shabbat. The Shabbat is we can put stuff on the animal that the animal needs, but not for our needs. You can't tie camels together and pull. And the Gemara explains here that this looks like you're going to market. This is tying one camel to another camel, to another camel, to another camel. A bit like pulling a camel train along. And we're not going to go to market on Shabbat, right? So we're not going to behave like that. But the Mishnah says, Aval, machnis chavalim lotoch yado ve'imshoch. If you grab all of their leading reins together in one handful, so they've all got that. We're not going to tie the camels together, but they've all got one leading rein, and we can pick them all up in one hand. Machnis chavalim lotoch yado. We can pick up all the cords in one hand, ve'imshoch, and we can pull. Uvilvad shelo yichroch, on condition that we don't twist them together. Why can't we twist them together? And again, the Gemara, the Mishnah is compact and it's obscure. It's not clear why we don't want to twist them together. The Gemara explains that we're worried here not about Shabbat, but about shatnez. Some of these cloths, maybe some of the cords may be made out of flax, and some of the cords may be made out of wool. So if we twist these cords together in one's hand, maybe we created in one's hand a sort of a thing a bit like a glove, which is a mixture of linen and wool. And of course, we're not going to do that on Shabbat or not on Shabbat because of shatnez. So again, we see the Mishnah is going through halachot related to animals, but it's touching on all kinds of other issues at the same time. And we'll come back to more of these tomorrow.